"I has Her Majesty's permission," cried the BFG, and all at once he let fly with a whiz-popper that sounded as though a bomb had exploded in the room. The Queen jumped. "Whoopee!" shouted the BFG. "That is better than bagel-pipes, is it not, Magister?" It took the Queen a few seconds to get over the shock. "I prefer the bagpipes," she said, but she couldn't stop herself smiling. During the next 20 minutes, a whole relay of footmen were kept busy, hurrying to and from the kitchen, carrying third helpings and fourth helpings and fifth helpings of fried eggs and sausages for the ravenous and delighted BFG. When the BFG had consumed his 72nd fried egg, Mr. Tibbs sidled up to the Queen. He bent low from the waist and whispered in her ear, "Chef sends his apologies, Your Majesty, and he says he has no more eggs in the kitchen." "What's wrong with the hens?" the Queen said. "Nothing's wrong with the hens, Your Majesty," Mr. Tibbs whispered. "Then tell them to lay more," the Queen said. She looked up at the BFG. "Have some toast and marmalade while you're waiting," she said to him. "The toast is finished," Mr. Tibbs whispered, "and Chef said there is no more bread." "Tell him to bake more," the Queen said. While all this was going on, Sophie had been telling the Queen everything, absolutely everything about her visit to Giant Country. The Queen listened, appalled. When Sophie had finished, the Queen looked up at the BFG, who was sitting high above her. He was now eating a sponge cake. "Big, friendly giant," she said. "Last night those man-eating brutes came to England. Can you remember where they went the night before?" The BFG put a whole round sponge cake into his mouth and chewed it slowly while he thought about this question. "Yes, Magister," he said, "I do think I is remembering where they said they was going the night before last. They was galloping off to Sweden for the Sweden sour taste." "Fetch me a telephone," the Queen commanded. Mr. Tibbs placed the instrument on the table. The Queen lifted the receiver. "Get me the King of Sweden," she said. "Good morning," the Queen said. "Is everything right in Sweden?" "Everything is terrible," the King of Sweden answered. "There is panic in the capital. 2 nights ago 26 of my loyal subjects disappeared. My whole country is in a panic." "Your 26 loyal subjects were all eaten by giants," the Queen said. "Apparently they like the taste of Swedes." "Why do they like the taste of Swedes?" the King asked. "Because the Swedes of Sweden have a sweet and sour taste. So says the BFG," the Queen said. "I don't know what you're talking about," the King said, growing testy. "It's hardly a joking matter when one's loyal subjects are being eaten like popcorn." "They've eaten mine as well," the Queen said. "Who's they, for heaven's sake?" the King asked. "Giants," the Queen said. "Look here," the King said. "Are you feeling all right?" "It's been a rough morning," the Queen said. "First I had a horrid nightmare, then the maid dropped my breakfast, and now I've got a giant on the piano." "You need a doctor, quick!" cried the King. "I'll be all right," the Queen said. "I must go now. Thanks for your help." She replaced the receiver. "Your BFG is right," the Queen said to Sophie. "Those 9 man-eating brutes did go to Sweden." "It's horrible," Sophie said. "Please stop them, Your Majesty." "I'd like to make one more check before I call out the troops," the Queen said. Once more she looked up at the BFG. He was eating doughnuts now, popping them into his mouth 10 at a time like peas. "Think hard, BFG," she said. Where did those horrid giants say they were galloping off to 3 nights ago?" The BFG thought long and hard. "Ho, ho!" he cried. "Yes, I is remembering." "Where?" asked the Queen. "One was off to Baghdad," the BFG said. "As they is galloping past my cave, flesh-lumter eating, is waving his arms and shouting at me, 'I is off to Baghdad, and I is going to Baghdad, and Mum and every one of their 10 children as well.'" Once more the Queen lifted the receiver. "Get me the Lord Mayor of Baghdad," she said. "If they don't have a Lord Mayor, get me the next best thing." In 5 seconds a voice was on the line. "Here is the Sultan of Baghdad speaking," the voice said. "Listen, Sultan," the Queen said. "Did anything unpleasant happen in your city 3 nights ago?" "Every night unpleasant things are happening in Baghdad," the Sultan said. "We are chopping off people's heads like you are chopping parsley." "I've never chopped parsley in my life," the Queen said. "I want to know if anyone had disappeared recently in Baghdad." "Only my uncle, Caliph Haroun al-Rashid," the Sultan said. "He disappeared from his bed 3 nights ago, together with his wife and his 10 children. "There you is!" cried the BFG, whose wonderful ears enabled him to hear what the Sultan was saying to the Queen on the telephone. "Flesh-lumter did that one. He went off to Baghdad Dad and Mom and all the little kiddies." The Queen replaced the receiver. "That proves it," she said, looking up at the BFG. "Your story is apparently quite true. Summon the head of the army and the head of the Air Force immediately." The plan. The head of the army and the head of Air Force stood at attention beside the Queen's breakfast table. Sophie was still in her seat and the BFG was still high up on his crazy perch. It took the Queen only 5 minutes to explain the situation to the military man. "I knew there was something like this going on, Your Majesty," the head of the army said. "For the last 10 years we have been getting reports from nearly every country in the world about people disappearing mysteriously in the night. We had one only the other day from Panama." "For the heady taste!" cried the BFG. "And one from Wellington in New Zealand," said the head of the army. "For the booty flavor!" cried the BFG. "What is he talking about?" said the head of the Air Force. "Work it out for yourself," the Queen said. "What time is it?" 10 a.m. In 8 hours those 9 bloody thirsty brutes will be galloping off to gobble up another couple of dozen unfortunate wretches. They have to be stopped. We must act fast. "We'll bomb the blighters," shouted the head of the Air Force. "We'll mow them down with machine guns," cried the head of the army. "I do not approve of murder," the Queen said. "But they are murderers themselves," cried the head of the army. "That is no reason why we should follow their example," the Queen said. "2 wrongs don't make a right." "And 2 rights don't make a left," cried the BFG. "We must bring them back alive," the Queen said. "How?" the 2 military men said together. "They are all 50 feet high. They'd knock us down like 9-pins." "Wait," cried the BFG. "Hold your horseflies. Keep your skirts on. I think I has the answer to the maiden's hair." "Let him speak," the Queen said. "Every afternoon," the BFG said, "all these giants is in the land of Noddy." "I can't understand a word this feller says," the head of the army snapped. "Why doesn't he speak clearly?" "He means the land of Nod," Sophie said. "It's pretty obvious." "Exactly!" cried the BFG. "Every afternoon all these 9 giants is lying on the ground snoozling away in a very deep sleep. They is always resting, like that before they is galloping off to guzzle another helping of human beings. Go on, they said. So what? So what you soldiers has to do is to creep up to their giants while they is still in the land of Nodi, and they tie their arms and legs with mighty ropes and whonking chains. Brilliant, the Queen said. That's all very well, said the head of the army, but how do we get the brutes back here? We can't load 50-foot giants onto trucks. Shoot them on the spot, that's what I say. The BFG looked down from his lofty perch and said, this time to the head of the Air Force, you is having belly poppers, is you not? Is he being rude? The head of the Air Force said. He means helicopters, Sophie told him. Then why doesn't he say so? Of course we have helicopters. Oopsie, big belly poppers? Asked the BFG. Very big ones, the head of the Air Force said proudly. But no helicopter is big enough to get a giant like that inside it. You do not put him inside, the BFG said. You sling him underneath the belly of your belly popper and carry him like a torpedo. Like a what? Said the head of the Air Force. Like a torpedo, Sophie said. Could you do that, Air Marshal? The Queen asked. Well, I suppose we could, the head of the Air Force admitted grudgingly. Then get cracking, the Queen said. You'll need 9 helicopters, 1 for each giant. Where is this place? The Air Force man said to the BFG. I presume you can pinpoint it on the map? Pinpoint, said the BFG. Map? I is never hearing these words before. Is this Air Force bean talking slush bungle? The Air Marshal's face turned the color of a ripe plum. He was not used to being told he was talking slush bungle. The Queen, with her usual admirable act and good sense, came to the rescue. BFG, she said, can you tell us more or less where this giant country is? No, Magister, the BFG said, not on my Nelly. Then we're jiggered, cried the Army General. This is ridiculous, cried the Air Marshal. You must not be giving up so easy, the BFG said calmly. The first titchy bobsticle you meet and you begin shouting you is beef squiggled. The Army General was no more used to being insulted than the Air Marshal. His face began to swell with fury, and his cheeks blew out until they looked like 2 huge ripe tomatoes. Your Majesty, he cried, we are dealing with a lunatic. I want nothing more to do with this ridiculous operation. The Queen, who was used to the tantrums of her senior officials, ignored him completely. BFG, she said, would you please tell these rather dim-witted characters exactly what to do? A pleasure, Magister, said the BFG. Now listen to me carefully, you 2 boot-bogglers. The military man began to twitch, but they stayed out. I is not having the foggiest idea where giant country is in the world, but I is always able to gallop there. I is galloping forthward and backward from giant country every night to blow my dreams into little children's bedrooms. I is knowing the way very well, so all you have is having to do this. Put your 9 big belly hoppers up in the air and let them follow me as I is galloping along. How long will the journey take? The Queen asked. If we is leaving now, the BFG said, we will be arriving just as the giant is having their afternoon snoozle. Splendid, said the Queen. Then turning to the 2 military men, she said, prepare to leave immediately.